Hey guys, Bernard Scott again, Intellectual Endeavors. This is part 2 of the video series, Why I Don't Believe in God. As you guys have noticed, the title of this particular video is God's Existence Possible? With that being said, I think we need to start off by discussing the definition of two words, possibility and probability. Now, the word possible merely means that there's no logical contradiction to what somebody has proclaimed. Probability refers to the measure and likelihood of something that might be truthful. Now, the only time when something is impossible is when it violates the law of non-contradiction. Now, the law of non-contradiction states that things cannot be both true and not true at the same time. Now, a lot of people have a bad, definition of this, because they'll try to argue and say that the law of non-contradiction, it's bull, because look at it like this. You have these classifications of human beings named males, and you have a classification called females. But we also have this classification called hermaphrodites, which have both male and female parts. So that shows the law of non-contradiction is wrong, which they're mistaken. The only time that it will violate the law of non-contradiction is if somebody says that hermaphrodites exist and then they don't exist at the same time. Now, let's discuss probability for a little bit. Now, let's just say if I take you guys out to an open field and sit you down on lawn chairs, and I tell you guys that, well, 20 minutes from now, there'll be this military aircraft that will land out in this open field. And once it lands, the back of it will open up, and 20 FBI agents will come out of it, and they'll be wearing like a football helmet with pink flowers on it, the shirt that's too little, some beach shorts and beach flip-flops. They'll come out and they'll dance for us for 6 seconds, get back in the helicopter or aircraft of some sort, and fly on off, and the military will pay for this. Now, what if I asked you guys, was that possible? Most of you guys would say something like, no, that can't be possible, because think of it. Why would the government waste manpower and money and all of these resources and all of these things just to give you a 6-second show or whatever? Now, do military aircrafts exist? Yes. Are they capable of transporting 20 government agents? Yes. Can these government agents put on the attire that I mentioned? Yes. They have the ability to dance for a few seconds? Yes. So the scenario is possible. What you guys are speaking of is the level of probability. It's not very probable based on the information that we know so far. So it's possible, just not highly probable. Now let's get to the subject matter at hand. Now, like I said before in my last video, it's kind of hard for me to say whether God exists, because in order for me to say whether something exists or not, I have to have the definition of that thing that we're talking about. And as I mentioned in the last video, there have been millions of gods that mankind has proclaimed to have existed for thousands of years. Even within Christianity, there are over 250,000 distinct Christian denominations, each having various definitions about God himself. So for the purpose of this video, I'm pretty much just going to cover the more popular perfected ideal of the, as some say, the Judeo-Christian God, but I don't really see it as Judeo-Christian. It's more like Christian Islamic, perfected Christian Islamic version of God. The first attribute I'm going to cover is omnipotence, which means that he is all-powerful. There is nothing that God can't do. The second one is omniscience, which means that he is all-knowing, he is all-wise. There isn't anything he doesn't know, and there isn't anything that he can't figure out how to do. The third example is benevolence or omnibenevolence. That pretty much means that God is the ultimate example of goodness, and there's no limit to his goodness. He has no evil intentions whatsoever. The fourth attribute is eternal, that God has always existed and he always will exist. Now, the fifth attribute I'm going to discuss is a term called ex nihilo. Now, the term ex nihilo is a Latin term, and it pretty much means out of nothing. Most theists believe that before God started creating something, there was nothing in existence. There was no matter, there was no mass, there was no gravity, there was nothing. And then God created everything in existence out of nothing. Now, let's see how this whole God thing adds up. Now, according to theists, what they're basically saying is that God is complete and perfect in every way. Now, if that is the case, why did he feel the need to create anything? I mean, because if you are actually complete and perfect, that means you have everything that you need. You're not in the need of anything. Therefore, I mean, God would not have the need to create anything for any reason. Now, I know the usual response by theists is something like, well, he wants our love and he wants our worship. But the key word there is want. Want is a desire. And if you desire, you only desire something that you do not have. Now, if you do not have something and you want it, that by definition means you are not complete. And if you are not complete, that means you are not perfect. As well, why would something as powerful as an almighty God want something as petty as worship? I mean, that seems like such a petty human desire from a human perspective of wanting to boost your ego through worship and all that. Now, here's a question that atheists ask theists a lot. They'll ask them, well, if God created us, who created God? And the theists will usually say something like, well, God has always existed. He existed before he created us, and he'll exist after he created us. Well, here's a few questions that I have. Number one, so that means God has lived for an eternity before he decided to create something. That means for an eternity, he was content being by himself. So why did he suddenly feel the need to create something? That's my first question. Second question, how long did he exist in nothingness before he decided to create something? Number three, what was the external catalyst that sparked the idea for him to create something? Number four, if nothing existed for an eternity before he decided to create something, wouldn't it be impossible for a catalyst of any sort to exist? Number five, if you say the catalyst was some sort of thought he had suddenly came up with, then why did it take him, how long did it take him for this thought to come up? But if he's truly omniscient, which means he has all knowledge, it really wouldn't take time for this thought to come up because he has all knowledge of everything altogether. So, it wouldn't be a thing of ideas suddenly popping up in his head. It should always have existed there from the beginning. Now, another problem that comes up when we're discussing this whole perfected idea of God is when we're discussing the subject of evil. Now, many people have either an incomplete or wrong definition of the term evils. Now, the term evil simply means innocent suffering. This is pretty much when something bad or negative happens to an individual and they did nothing to contribute to this. Now, there are basically two main categories of evils. I know that people like to put more categories on this, but there are basically two main categories of evils. There are moral evils and there are natural evils. Now, moral evils is when a human being does something to another human being. Let's just say, or sometimes it can be when a human being doesn't do something. So let's just say if you have a human being killing somebody else, then that's a moral evil. Or let's just say if you see somebody and they're about to be harmed and you can do something about it, but you choose not to, that can also be categorized as a moral evil. Now, natural evils are caused by acts of nature, like hurricanes, tornadoes, flood, diseases, or something as simple as gravity. You may have a child up on a porch and he or she is playing and she falls down on the concrete and bumps her elbow and gets a scrape or whatever. She's suffering. It doesn't have to mean they die as a result of this action. But if she's suffering, even a bruise or whatever, that's still considered a natural evil. Now, the usual response by the theist is, well, I just got two words for you: free will. Well, this actually consoles nothing because think about it. The attributes of God is that he's supposed to be benevolent, omnibenevolent, or all-knowing. So he would already know that if he put us in this world and he gave us free will, that it would eventually cause us harm as it's doing right now. So he, being omnibenevolent, he would have tried to keep us away from harm as much as he can. So he would have changed one of the two. He would have either said, well, I have to put you in this world, so I can't give you free will, or I'm going to give you free will and make it so this world is not as dangerous. But do we really have free will? I mean, think of it. By definition, the word free means without restrictions and limitations. But in the same breath, theists will say that, yeah, you're free to do whatever you want to do, but God gave us rules to follow. If you don't follow those rules, you're going to suffer in this world, and then you're going to suffer in the afterworld. You're going to go to hell and burn forever. Well, that's kind of like a slave master telling a slave, well, slave, you're free. You can free to walk off this plantation if you want to. But if you step one foot off this plantation, I'm going to grab you and I'm going to throw you on the tree and tie you to a tree and beat you until you're bloody and then cut off your foot. But you're free to walk off the plantation if you want to. The usual theist response to that is, well, we can't have free will like you're talking about, because people be going around killing and murdering and raping people and all that stuff. Well, the thing about it is, God is omnibenevolent. You know, his intentions are totally good. And he has all the power. He's omnipotent. So therefore, if he's omnibenevolent, he would have had the desire to create a world where there be no kind of suffering whatsoever. And since he's all powerful, he could have created a world where there would be no suffering whatsoever. And some theists will even respond to that by saying, well, wouldn't that be kind of a boring world where you have a world where everybody's just goody-goody gumdrops to each other? And my response is, so they would need murdering and killing and raping for entertainment value. And I mean, just think about what theists believe, that if you're good enough and you follow God's rule, you're going to go to a place called heaven, which is perfect and goody-goody gumdrops, so you're going to go there anyway. So why couldn't you just have created that in the first place? Here's another response I get by theists is that, well, you can't know good unless you know evil. Well, the thing about this is, God created the word ex nihilo from nothing. So, and he's also all-powerful. So he could have created a world to where we would know good without knowing evil. Second thing about this, the author J.L. Mackey, which I actually recommend you guys do some reading on him and his thoughts about God, he brings up an example of a world that's totally red. I mean, the color red is everywhere, just different shades of red. And somebody comes up and says there is another color that exists that is non-red. He says in order for that person to prove their point, they only need a speck of a non-red color, blue, green, whatever, a speck of non-red color to prove that there are other colors other than red. Same thing with evil. I mean, if we have a place that's totally good and we want to prove that there's evil, have a comparison, that we would only need a speck of evil. The problem is this world is totally saturated with evil. There's too much of it. But let's just say we had to do this ridiculous scenario where we had to compare good with something else in order to know good. How about we compare good with more good? I mean, just think about it. What if God put us on this perfect little planet, weather's nice and everything, and we just lay in the grass all day, like, oh, this is good, this is wonderful, I love this. Then all of a sudden God says, well, I think that mankind needs their own personal space. So here's this thing called a tent. And we get inside, oh, I love it. You know, we might invite our friends in. This is my personal space, but I'm going to share it with you. You know, it has its own characteristics. Then all of a sudden it was like, well, y'all like that tent so much, I made y'all something even better. I made y'all a house. Like, oh, this is wonderful, a house. And then one day we decide that we'd like to lay on the grass again or sleep in the tent. Does that mean that we hate the house? No, that does not mean that we see the house as evil or the tent as evil, because we have houses nowadays and people go camping and we like doing both of them. So there you go. Now theists usually ask me, well, you've mentioned a lot of reasons why you don't believe in God, but is there a way that God could prove his existence to you? Well, here's the thing about that. God is all-knowing, all-wise. That means he knows me better than I know myself. Therefore, he would already know What would convince me to believe in him? And if he is omnibenevolent, he would have tried it already. Now, a lot of theists will come back and say, well, he's giving you signs, you're just not paying attention. Well, if he's all-knowing, he wouldn't have to do this trial and error thing. Well, let me try to convince Venardis this way. Oh, man, he missed it. Let me try it again. He wouldn't have to if he's all-knowing. Thank you guys for watching. As I mentioned, this is just part 2. Now, what I was thinking about doing for the next video, an intermediate video, because a lot of you have been leaving me messages saying, well, would you discuss this next? Would you discuss that next? I could do something like that, or I could just go into part 3 of why I don't believe in God. I'm just leave that totally up to you guys. Leave a comment in the section below, and I'll consider whatever you guys vote on or comment on. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you can keep up with the latest videos that I'll be doing. It might come out in a week, it might come out with 2 weeks, at the most 2 weeks, but I try to bring out a video every week. But make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get an alert when the next video is out. Thanks for watching.